The city of Brookhaven adored Daniel Cross. To the public, he was the embodiment of courage, a decorated firefighter known for rushing into burning buildings when everyone else was running out. His photograph hung proudly in the lobby of City Hall, framed beneath a plaque that read "Hero of Brookhaven." Children waved whenever they saw him driving the fire truck through town, and local news stations often referred to him as the man who runs into fire. Just 3 months earlier, Daniel had become a national sensation after rescuing a family trapped on the 10th floor of a burning apartment building. The footage had spread across television and social media, smoke pouring from shattered windows, flames climbing the walls, and Daniel emerging through a cloud of ash carrying a small child wrapped in his jacket. The city cried tears of pride that night, and Daniel Cross became more than a firefighter. He became a legend. But legends often hide shadows. Beneath the admiration, applause, and public praise, Daniel carried secrets darker than the fires he fought. While the city celebrated his bravery, no one questioned how often he seemed to appear at the center of catastrophe. No one wondered why tragedy followed him like a silent companion. To the people of Brookhaven, Daniel Cross was the man who saved lives. What they did not realize was that sometimes heroes create the disasters they later rescue people from. Detective Mara Bennett had spent 15 years investigating fires that were not accidents. She had walked through the ashes of destroyed homes, examined melted wiring, and studied the patterns left behind by flames that had been deliberately set. To most people, a burned building was simply a tragedy. To Mara, it was a puzzle waiting to be solved. One quiet evening in her office, she sat surrounded by case files from the last several months. 8 major fires had struck Brookhaven in less than a year, an unusually high number for a city its size. At first glance, the incidents appeared unrelated, but something about them made Mara uneasy. The reports seemed too similar, as though the fires shared a hidden connection that no one else had noticed. As she flipped through the files again, the pattern finally revealed itself. Each fire had started late at night. Each had begun in secluded areas of buildings, electrical rooms, stairwells, storage spaces where few people would immediately notice smoke. And in every single case, one firefighter had been among the first to arrive at the scene, Daniel Cross. Mara leaned back in her chair, staring at his name repeated across the reports. It might have meant nothing. Firefighters often responded to multiple emergencies. Still, the coincidence gnawed at her instincts. Then she noticed another detail that tightened the knot in her stomach. In 3 of the fires, Daniel himself had been the one to report the initial smoke. Mara requested security footage from several of the damaged buildings. Most cameras had been destroyed in the fires, but one system had survived in the underground garage of a warehouse that had burned 2 months earlier. When the footage arrived, she watched it carefully, her eyes fixed on the grainy screen. At 1:13 in the morning, a man walked into the building through a side entrance. The lighting was poor, but the shape of his face was unmistakable. It was Daniel Cross. Yet something about the scene felt wrong. He was not wearing his firefighter uniform. Instead, he wore a dark hoodie and gloves, moving quietly down the corridor toward the electrical maintenance room. The exact location investigators believed the fire had started. 2 minutes later, the video abruptly cut to static. Shortly after that, the fire alarm sounded. The room seemed colder as Mara replayed the footage again and again. Her pulse quickened with a terrible realization forming in her mind. What if the hero of Brookhaven was not simply responding to fires? What if he was creating them? Accusing a beloved public figure without solid proof would be career suicide, so Mara kept her suspicions secret. Instead, she began observing Daniel quietly. She reviewed his work schedule, tracked his movements, and examined his phone records. She spoke with witnesses who had been near previous fires, carefully asking questions that would not reveal her suspicions. One elderly man who lived near the Riverside warehouse remembered seeing something odd on the night of the fire. He had been walking his dog when a black sedan sped out of the alley behind the building minutes before flames erupted from the windows. When Mara showed him a photograph of Daniel, the old man nodded slowly. The car, he said, looked exactly like the one Daniel often drove. Digging deeper into Daniel's background revealed another unsettling fact. Before joining the fire department, he had studied chemical engineering at a university several states away. The education had given him detailed knowledge of accelerants, ignition temperatures, and the behavior of flames under different conditions. In the wrong hands, that knowledge could be used to start fires that looked like tragic accidents. Suddenly, Daniel's heroic rescues seemed less miraculous and more calculated. Weeks passed without another major fire, and Mara began to worry she might be chasing a theory she could never prove. Then one cold November night, the emergency dispatch radio crackled with a new call. Possible fire reported at Greenridge Medical Center. Mara froze when she heard the address. Daniel Cross had begun his shift at a nearby station less than an hour earlier. Grabbing her coat, she rushed out of the precinct and drove straight toward the hospital, her mind racing with possibilities she hoped were wrong. By the time she arrived, smoke was already drifting from one wing of the building. Fire engines screamed into the parking lot, their red and blue lights flashing across the hospital walls. Daniel jumped from the truck with the rest of his crew and ran inside without hesitation, just as the cameras would expect their hero to do. But Mara did not follow the firefighters through the main entrance. Instead, she circled around the back of the building where maintenance workers sometimes entered. Near a service door, she spotted something lying in the snow. It was a small metal container partially hidden behind a trash bin. When she opened it, the sharp smell of gasoline filled the air. Footprints surrounded the container, fresh impressions leading toward the hospital entrance where Daniel had disappeared moments earlier. Mara's chest tightened. The evidence was undeniable. He had started the fire again, planning to arrive just in time to save the day. Inside the hospital, firefighters began evacuating patients from the smoke-filled wing. Nurses rushed frightened people down hallways while alarms echoed through the building. After several minutes, Daniel emerged through the front doors carrying an elderly woman in his arms. Reporters who had already gathered outside raised their cameras, capturing the dramatic moment as the city's hero saved another life. Applause erupted from bystanders. Mara pushed through the crowd and called out his name. Daniel turned toward her, his expression calm but alert. She held up the gasoline container for everyone to see. The cheering stopped instantly. "Care to explain this?" she asked. For a brief second, Daniel's heroic mask slipped, revealing something colder underneath. Then he smiled. Not the warm, reassuring smile people recognized from television, but something sharp and unsettling. "You're smarter than the others," he said quietly. "You set them," Mara replied, her voice steady despite the anger building inside her. "All those fires." Daniel glanced toward the flashing cameras surrounding them and shrugged slightly. "People love heroes," he said. "They need someone to cheer for, someone to thank when disaster strikes. But without disaster, there's no hero." Mara felt a wave of nausea. "You risked people's lives just to play savior?" "I always made sure I arrived in time," Daniel whispered. Police vehicles screeched into the hospital parking lot as officers moved in to arrest him. For a moment, it seemed the nightmare had ended. Then Daniel calmly raised his hands and looked directly at Mara. "You should check the East Wing," he said. Confused, she asked why. Daniel's eyes glinted with chilling satisfaction. "Because the fire you see," he said softly, "isn't the real one." At that exact moment, a deafening explosion tore through the hospital building. The roof above the East Wing erupted in flames as windows shattered outward. Firefighters shouted in panic while patients screamed inside the corridors. Mara's heart sank as she realized what he had done. The blaze outside had been nothing more than a distraction. The real inferno had already begun deeper inside the hospital.